Hello, everyone, and welcome to another amazing episode of Sphere of Being, the podcast, which I always say, and you must be getting so fed up with me, but put your oxygen mask on first. This is the thing. We've got to make sure that we are abundant, we are overflowing, we are energized, we are the people that absolutely have limitless resource. And that only comes from working on ourselves. It comes from actually, it's not too woohoo, but really getting in tune with ourselves. And some would even say love ourselves. Not so easy to do sometimes, but if we can get to the stage of appreciation and gratitude, what we see within us sometimes reflects on the outside world, and we think, oh, hang on a minute, I'm seeing some changes. So today I have got you the most amazing guest. He is an international entrepreneur. This man is particularly intelligent. He's such a relaxed guy, but in between that is cogs of his brain are going all the time. He's also a heart-centered leader. He has seen from the sharp end, working with Baker Hughes, EY, Celerant, whom we both know from years ago, and he is also building up nonprofit initiatives. He's founded an amazing school of coding. It's called, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm going to have a look at my notes, is it 42 Beirut?
That's it. That's it, Deborah.
Fabulous, fabulous. Teaching young people to make sure that they have a career in coding, which is particularly useful in this day and age because also Jean-Paul is looking at AI and integrating that and the intersection with education. And he's bringing this into the new era of business, which is absolutely amazing. He's also a published author. I don't know where he gets the time to do all of this. It makes me think, oh my goodness me. He's doing so much in the world. And this is why I wanted him to come on to the podcast and let you know what he's doing, and something may resonate with you and you think, oh yeah, I can adopt these principles too. So, Jean-Paul Sacy, welcome. It's wonderful to have you on the Sphere of Being podcast.
Deborah, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to be with you. You and I have met a few weeks ago and I had a few prep calls before today's session. I love what you do and I love the positive vibe and energy that comes out of discussing and engaging with you. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for having me on the show.
Oh, it's a privilege. Let's hope that continues throughout our exchange. But absolutely, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. And I know that it's so important in business. We all come up, we all kind of show up in the world. But actually, there's always something really interesting, usually in between the fact of the person and what they're doing, but their life story before and where they are now. And it's always interesting, especially with our guests, to find a little bit about what makes Jean-Paul Sassy you. What are you all about?
Wow. Uh, a bit of background. I was born and raised in Beirut in the early 80s. At that time, the country was still in civil war. So the first few years of my life was in a place that was chaotic, dangerous, a bit all over the place, to be honest. And we survived. And we even thrilled to a certain extent. That builds resilience. But it also builds a bit of frustrations because things are simply not working around you. So I guess that fairly early in my life, I realized that one of the things that definitely made me happy was to simply said solve problems. Now there are problems all over the place, all over around us, and I've quickly realized that solving a small problem in a sustainable way simply made me happy, and from that fairly simple understanding, I've then and realization more than understanding, I've made it a life motto to a certain extent, and that's what I've been very humbly trying to do so for the last few decades. And always start small. So there's start with small problems and try to fix them. You might not get it right first time, but it's all about not letting go and continuing and thinking out of the box and trying, and then move to the next one and the next one. And the more you do this, and more importantly, the more you start enjoying doing this, the more complex problem you're able to tackle. As simple as that. So that's been my what's the term in English? Fil conductor, we say in French.
Reason for being, your mantra, your
That's it.
purpose.
Thank you very much. I haven't managed it, but I'm a French speaker, so English is a language I've acquired late in my life. So from time to time, I still go back to French expression. What a beautiful language.
Oh, fabulous. This is the whole thing, isn't it? The world is full with beautiful different styles of communication, most of which are non-verbal. So we get you, even just by your beautiful smile and your energy, we get what you're all about, which is fabulous. And thank you for that. Because when we show up and we've had childhood experiences that, rightly or wrongly, they shape us for the future. And sometimes they shape us in the right way, and sometimes they shape us in a way that actually doesn't serve us in the long run. I'd love for you to unpack a little how you got into, because your career spans nations. You are truly a man of the world. You know, you are a global citizen. What was it within your upbringing that you can think of that actually gave you this thirst, this desire to travel, experience different cultures, and help people in the business world of being in from, Beirut and now traveling all over the world as you do?
Wow. Uh, I'm going to say something that is a bit unoriginal, Deborah, but uh, Lebanon, I don't know how well you know the geography, but it's basically a mountain in front of the sea. So if you look back, you've got the mountain on your back, and if you look in front, you've got the sea. So you're always naturally inspired by the sea. And if you look at the history of this amazing piece of land for the last few thousands of years, initially with the Phoenicians, but it hasn't stopped since, people emigrate and go about, and just go in the world and do stuff. But they always remain very connected and attached to their, the place they were born, the place they relate to, and find a way to come back. And that's again, and probably similarly to millions of Lebanese, has been the story of my life. Now, how does that translate and translates into when you grow up, you've got key figures around you of individuals that you progressively admire, and a lot of those people are end up being examples and figures of inspiration, and you want to do the same. Now you don't always succeed, but at least they're the one who's pulling you up in the right direction. It's been like this. There's a few there's a few folks around me that since I was a kid, as I've always admired. First of which my father, but my uncles, folks around me, and I just follow their steps. Now it's a curse and a blessing in the sense that being a Lebanese, there's volumes of figures like this, and it's a curse in the sense that it's to a certain extent unfortunate for Lebanon because you always have that talent is always immigrating. So it can only work if we remain connected with the motherland, which isn't the case of all the Lebanese. But the good news is it's the case of a big chunk of the Lebanese. So after spending a few decades out, the last I would say 5 to 10 years, we're all about giving back and finding ways to build projects on the ground without necessarily going back and living in Lebanon. But we live in the 21st century is all about connections. Connectivity is pretty easy to travel around, and you can work from abroad, especially post COVID, making things happen, creating communities that are dispatched all over the world is something has become significantly easier. It's not that it was impossible before, but it's kind of like a walk in the park. We're getting to the first quarter of the 21st century, and that's what I've been doing multiple times, initiating, supporting, energizing different projects that have an impact on the ground, and that's been probably that brought a lot of joy. Wasn't definitely easy. It not always worked, by the way. There's a lot of we'll be talking about some of the projects that work. It's always fun to talk about things that work, but believe me, there's quite a few things that didn't. But it's not the end of the world. If you still have a few that did, these are the ones that you'll remember, and more importantly, these are the ones that you'll be proud in a few years, to mention to your kids. So hopefully you inspire them. That's the mindset.
This is beautiful. And what you've mentioned here is the first quarter of the 21st century is almost upon us, which is absolutely mind-blowing. And thank you for saying that because I hadn't actually picked up on that theme, but you're absolutely right. And what I'd like to hear from you is what changes have you seen over that period of time? And how do you now want to assist businesses, assist communities to go to the next 25 years in their plans and how they're going to go out into the world.
I'm gonna take a tiny angle and dive into it. The last, I would say, probably 5 years, 5 to 10 years, with the democratization of technologies that basically make this podcast possible, i.e., connect fairly easily at close to no cost with pretty much everybody in the world, has has one impact that, from my perspective, is truly transformative. It's the ability to build communities at no cost, and we see this more and more. But the so it gives pretty much everybody in the world the ability to, within his own network, create communities to go after a specific project. So you don't anymore need, first of all, a lot of capital, but also, to be at the right place at the right time, which used to be a constraint up to fairly, not a while ago. Let's make this tangible. 6, 7 years ago, well, probably less, 4, 5 years ago, Lebanon went through a revolution. 2019, there was a revolution, then the explosion in the port of Beirut. I don't know if you remember this, Deborah, but it's the biggest non-nuclear explosion in the world history. So it wiped out 20% of Beirut. So the place was pretty chaotic. And there were elections coming in probably a year and a half later. So I'm talking 2021, 2022. So with a few friends, we wanted to help. We didn't really want to get involved on the political side of the equation for all kind of reasons, but wanted to help and realized that one of the things we could do was, and I've mentioned this to you in some of our prep calls, is what the Americans refer to as GOTV, get out the vote. The idea is very simple. You wanna enable change at a political level. Well, the secret recipe is and that is something that really became popular after the 2008 Obama campaign. There's a lot of theory behind and methodologies and the idea is simple. You need to make sure that folks register, and then when they do register, they go and vote, and ultimately they vote for the right person or party. Now, tend to focus on the latter, i.e., I want to make sure that they vote for the right candidate or the right party. But the secret recipe is that if you work on step one, step two, step three becomes way easier, and to a certain extent even irrelevant. So you need to make sure that folks register and go vote. And their technology can play a huge role in reaching out to the right people, in micro-targeting the right people, and in making sure that they go register and they go vote. Now, we've done this with probably 50 folks through a set of associations 3, 4 years ago. And the impact, because that can be measured pretty easily, we took the number of Lebanese that were working in the diasporas outside of Lebanon that actually were voting in the top 50 cities in the world. I forgot the specific numbers, but we doubled it or tripled it. Did it translate into political change? No, it didn't. That was disappointing. Hopefully with what's happening now, it will, but at that time it didn't. But was it the end of the world? No, because my objective was to demonstrate that it was possible, and we did. And we did. The tech is pretty straightforward, and together with probably 50 other folks, we that were spread out across the world, we, to a large extent, made that a reality. Do you think it was super complex? Do you think it cost us millions of dollars and required a lot of? Okay, no, not at all. It all happened on Zoom and Slack and that's it. Finding the right people, explaining, articulating, collaborating, and All of this is pretty straightforward, doesn't require resources. Identifying the right folks becomes way easier, and that's it. So we went from a few folks with a few ideas to tens of folks with a lot of ideas and had an impact. That's one example. So coming back to your question, being able to do this is sorry, pretty much everybody is able to do this. It's just a question of wanting and not giving up when it's not easy. That's it. But tech is there and it's not even expensive. That's it.
Thank you, because this is exactly what I'm doing in the podcast. As you mentioned, podcasting is very simple to do. It's you can even do it for free. There's no need to pay for expensive equipment or recording or anything that you think, oh wow, really? Can I do this for free? That was one of the things that really I thought, well, and also from a technical perspective, and I have to say, I'm not particularly technical. Even I could navigate how to do it, which saying that, I think if I could do it, anybody can, is the fact that now I have the amplification of the voice and my guest voice across an international global forum. And that is powerful. That is so powerful. And I'd like to think now, how can you help businesses, people that are coming up with these ideas, to actually think, right, how can we form a community? How can we get a concept across to millions of people across the globe, or it could be in a local community? What would you say were the steps that you took without giving your secret sauce away? But what would you say is the tips to people to how to get that started?
So, as you rightfully mentioned in your introductory note, over the last half a decade, I've been involved in probably two to three uh, initiatives that were, in their essence, non-profit. And so my approach is the following. Obviously, it needs to come from the heart because you're not doing this for profit. You don't really, there's no real obligation for you to do this. Obviously, you need to be able to carve out the time needed to do it. So that means that, and it's to a certain extent a luxury, and I'm blessed to have it in the sense that I've, I've got, my money making part, the money making part of my day, can be managed in a way that gives me enough free time and flexibility to carve out that 10-20% of time needed to go after non-money making initiatives. Now that, and I reckon, is a huge luxury. It's not given to everybody, but it brings me so much joy that I can only but encourage folks to think about getting to a point in their life where this becomes a reality. And if they have the choice between, I don't know, doubling what they're making in terms of revenue vis-a-vis having 20% free time to do that, doing this generates so much more goodwill and positive vibes that it's a better investment of their time. So that's one. It's being able to carve out 20% of your time. Coming up with an idea, to be honest, speak to people around you, discuss, test ideas. That's pretty straightforward. Just go out and wander in the world, and the ideas are going to come. If you want to solve problems and do good, there's so much things you could do around you. So the idea is rarely the limiting factor, and because it's not money driven, you don't. There's no. We're not in the business world, so there's no rule of competition. It's collaborating, it's accelerating, and. So you don't need to be the first one and beat everybody to market, and all of that does not apply. So come up with an idea. I think that the second step is, or the third step, whatever that is, it's just writing things down. Nowadays with Gen AI, it's way easier than it was a few years back. Just come up with a concept note, explain what you want to do. Look up for similar ideas out there. Look up for inspiration, but try to structure it. It is a project at the end of the day. So there's a people component, there's a process component, there's a timeline. You manage it like we manage projects, pretty much across the board. Same thing. The step afterwards is in lots of cases, I would say probably in most cases, you won't be able to do much alone. And this is where the whole building a community thing that I was referring to a few minutes earlier kicks in. So find folks around you that are like-minded, that might have the same objectives, that would want to work with you, that want to learn with you, that enjoy spending time with you, that enjoy. And, and again, start small. You don't need to be 50 or 100 at the beginning, but two, three, four, get them to own the initiative. And then often there is, and again, pretty classic, at some point, there's going to be a fundraising aspect. Uh, yeah, fundamentally, there's a lot of folks that want to help, don't have time. So if you're the person that has time, has an idea, has a mechanism, chances are that if you really embody the initiative and it comes from your heart, you'll be able to convince them, and they'll give you means, and just progress. The last thing I'm going to put forward is move fast, fail fast, succeed fast, in the sense that yeah, after a few weeks and months, if you don't have traction, kill it. Move to the next ID. Remember, this is you're not doing this to earn a living. You're not doing this to keep your kids at school or to put money aside. You're doing this because you want to enjoy it. But just don't believe in it. But if for any reason you got it wrong, and I'm not saying after a few days or weeks, but fairly rapidly, you reevaluate. My golden rule is one big ID per year. Now, again, I'm not saying it's a golden rule, but for me, the logic is I always have multiple projects I'd love to do. Obviously, I'm limited in terms of capacity. So I opt for one every year. And after I give it a year, if it still hasn't yielded the results I was expecting, I just, cut my losses. And again, there's no real losses apart from losing 20% of my time, which again is not the end of the world because I wanted to do that. That was my decision and I took out of joy doing it. I just stop and I move to the next one. In certain cases, I gave 2 years for things to happen. So in the case of the coding school we were talking about at the beginning, that's more than 2.5 years of my life. Perfect, because it was progressing, because we felt we are getting closer to the objective. We continued. So yeah, that's the secret recipe. I wouldn't call that, but that's at least the method I came up with, having done that not 200 times, by the way, but 3 to 4 times now.
This is something that can be used externally outside of this collaborative community building nonprofit, because you've mentioned something that a lot of people, and I know I've been guilty of this, is getting married to the idea and thinking that you've got to see it through because otherwise it's deemed as failure. I'd love for you, because I don't want to start to go down that road and tell people what my thoughts are about failure. But could you, in your own words, from all the business experience that you've had as well, and within this collaborative community situation now and these nonprofits that you are building, what does failure have as a benefit?
Again, I'm gonna put forward things that you probably heard and overheard, but there's in everything we do, we learn. If that's the mindset that you have, there's nothing like failure. It's just that you haven't achieved the objectives, but you've learned something. So if you enter into a problem solving challenge with that mindset, even if you haven't succeeded solving the problem, you've certainly learned a lot about how things work, how things interact, and the mistakes you made. So that's it. If this is the mindset, there's nothing like failure. It's just that you haven't met the objective, but you've learned stuff. And you apply this to, especially when the risks are in between brackets low, i.e., again, and I keep insisting, I have a totally different approach for the businesses I run. I'm significantly more risk adverse because obviously, it's think about it from a Maslow pyramid perspective. If it addresses the fundamentals, yeah, you're going to be way more conservative. If it's self-fulfillment on top, which a lot of what I'm mentioning is, yeah, there's nothing like risk because it's addressing that self-fulfillment side of your needs. And even if it doesn't work, you still have fulfilled that self-fulfillment aspect. If what I say makes sense, huh? So there's no failure there. In business, it's a different ballgame. That's not the purpose of our conversation now, but yeah, be more conservative, try to minimize your losses, try to exit any toxic situation, any toxic business relationship early enough. At the end of the day, in everything we initiate, entreprendre, we say in French, as entrepreneurs. There's a context, there's an environment, there's people you work with, there's an economical situation around you. So pretending that you're controlling all the variables is an illusion. You don't. So for not always, but in lots of cases, you're failing because you were either giving the wrong cards or the environment ended up being disfavorable for you. So yeah, just reckon this and move to the next, hopefully by limiting the losses. Now, if you had the right environment and the right means and everything was right and you just did the wrong stuff, well, be humble and admit it was the wrong stuff. Don't get stubborn the worst thing that could happen is because humans, we discussed this, you and I, last time in our introductory call, but it's about storytelling, so it's all about stories and the biggest trap we have is when we fail, tell to ourselves a wrong story. Just convince ourselves that I failed because of A, B, C, D, but it's not my fault. And if it's the case, that's perfect. But if it's not the case, you're not helping yourself by twisting the reality because you're wrongly impacting that learning element of it because you're gonna convince yourself. If I say to myself 10 times that the reason why I fail is not due to me, it's because of ABCD, and it's wrong, objectively speaking, I'll end up forgetting the fact that it's not the case. And I'll remember only the story I've told to myself, and it's gonna get reinforced. So again, not helping myself. So yeah, that's it. These are the points I put forward, Deborah.
And turning this now into success and the benefit of doing this, what is it that you have derived from the experience that has benefited you and those around you from actually what you're doing with these wonderful initiatives?
So since I was a kid, I've always enjoyed meeting people. I think I'm genuinely curious. Um, I love to meet people, understand their stories, and connect emotionally, connect. And uh, it's interesting because the question you haven't asked is why? Why am I doing all of this? So there's multiple answers to the why, but one of the answers is because I'm meeting like-minded individuals, and my circle of friends, my circle of influence, my connections are growing. And one of the it wasn't the purpose initially. I'm just realizing this, having been in that kind of dynamic for the last few years now, is that you end up having a network of folks where there is a mutually respected relationship, there's mutual respect that is significant. So things happen. It's as simple as this. You get phone calls, you get folks that are approaching you on things that are interesting significantly more. At least it's the case in my life, way more now than 10, 20 years ago. And the other way around, you would solicitate your network on things, and often, people might ignore you. You might ask something, send an email, send a text, make a phone call, and people are gonna just simply ignore you or not respond, or respond 3 months later, or respond by a yes, but it's actually a no, and you're losing your time and their time. Uh, but because you've built those trusted relationship, the probability of it happening doesn't go to zero, but it's significantly lower. So yeah, coming back to your ask, this is success in the sense that it's success brings success. You do that the first time, it's a bit tougher, but the larger the network grows, the more your ability to mobilize the right type of people to support you on the right type of topics increases, and you're ultimately more impactful and quicker. So you can remember what I started by saying, you can address more complex problems and solving them in more original ways So you started, I started with small problems to solve. I'm in my late 40s. I want to continue doing this at least for the next two, hopefully 3 decades. Perfect. Just ask me what type of problems do I think I'll be able to solve in 20, 25 years. I don't know. The only thing I know is that hopefully there'll be way more complex problems than what I'm solving now. And guess what? The ones I'm trying to solve now are, objectively speaking, already pretty complex, huh? But I've got 20 years in front of me, and I can see the difference between the ones I was solving 3 years ago and the ones now. So that's it. Why am I able to do that? Not because I'm getting smarter. I'm actually probably gonna get less smart as time passes. Huh? Our brain, unfortunately, uh, doesn't mature well with age. We all know this, huh? But one thing that does mature well with age is your network. And it's only through this and by this and with this that I'll be able to solve more complex problems. That's my mindset.
I love it because this is all about what Sphere of Being is all about on this podcast, is thinking about ourselves and putting us at the top of the list and actually figuring on our own list, because often we're not even on there. And it's actually thinking, how can I contribute? How can I add value? What is it in the world that I could be involved with that I can make a difference to in a positive way? And from personal experience, what comes back is exponentially good. And it trains and challenges and strength tests and all those things. But actually, as we go on in life, it's also significantly helped my business. As you said, with that network, it's something which these people are trusted friends, they are allies, they're comrades in that sense. And having building the community, I would say to anybody out there, give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? Some people get together and then you think of something else. It's all okay. It's all fun. It's all out there in the playground having a great time. And you know what? We can look back and think, oh, I wish I'd have done that. Well, let's get the wish out the way and actually let's say, I did this. This happened. Oh, and the laugh when we had when all that went completely crazy and bonkers and we had to declare, oh my word. But these are the stuff that dreams are made of. This is life. So, Jean-Paul, thank you so much. It's been brilliantly inspiring listening to you and your insights. And you're such a humble man. Because what I will say to people is Jean-Paul makes a very big difference in the world. He's a standout entrepreneur. He's a standout business leader with a heart, and he won't be saying this himself, so I've got to big him up for him. Probably feeling uncomfortable now, bless him, but absolutely credit where credit's due. And Jean-Paul, how can people get hold of you?
Wow. LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. I'm actually quite responsive on LinkedIn. You reached out to me on LinkedIn, so that worked pretty well. Deborah didn't. Yeah, that's it. LinkedIn, what's up? I tend to be very reactive. I normally come back to people maximum 2 to 3 days. We haven't talked about it, but nowadays, in December 2024, technology has progressed so much that we can uh, we can uh, we can organize ourselves in ways that makes us effective and efficient at levels we've never seen before. So you can, even though there's still 24 hours in a day, yeah, if we bring it back to the productivities of 100 years ago, we probably extended the day by, I don't know, 100 hours. Huh? You can do significantly more. And that's it. We haven't talked also about how do I leverage technology to enable all of this. I don't have the recipe, the magic wand, but I keep on experimenting. And if I like stuff, I just embed them in the way I function. If I don't, I just move to the next. And I also encourage people to do this because this is the only way for us to be able to do more with the limited time we have. Deborah, thanks a million for having me on your show.
It's an absolute pleasure. You, as Arnold Schwarzenegger said, you'll be back.
Thank you.
Oh, bless you. And everybody listening, it's the time is now. Don't procrastinate. Just do it. Get in there. Get your hands dirty. Get your sleeves rolled up. Get in that swimming pool. Get it, whatever you want to do. Get in that whole melee of this beautiful thing about contributing and adding value. And you know what? People are just waiting. to help and collaborate. And sometimes it just takes somebody to do the asking. So yeah, don't hold off. It's a wonderful experience when you do. So everybody, until next time, carry on caring, as I always say. And we'll see you all again next time. Take care now. Bye bye.
Thank you.